from what we see over here in Shara B'tachon, yesterday and the day before that, it sounds hard to do the kiyum of the mitzvah of trusting in God. Why it says, we said previously, we're not going to get into it too much. We said regarding, so if you want to have true bitachon b'Hashem, true trust in God, you have to have piv v'libo shavim. Your mouth and your heart have to be equal. That means you can't tell everyone, I'm b'tach b'Hashem, God, I'm b'tach with you, and then God's going to check inside and see you're lying to him. Something bad happens, you right away check your bank account, you check your with your boss, if he bought a check, if he works with you like that, blah, blah, blah. You're not trusting you're trusting the natural process and not trusting God. Now, the idea over here moves on. That we said someone that also does averot, someone that does some actions that proves that he's not batach b'Hashem. Through these actions, it shows God, I love you, but I'm doing things that don't work. Whatever I feel like, whatever you're doing, whatever I have to do more to do it. I have to take more precautions. That's the best way to say it. Okay, I see that I'm not making enough. So I'm going to work even a couple hours, even an hour before Shabbat. Why? Because I want to make that money. I don't trust this guy's going to send me up, Baruch Hashem, good and well. Chas v'shalom, someone that gives himself also an excuse. I trust God. I go to the shiurim, the shiur Torah, but on Shabbat I can't go. I can't close the shop the whole day. Chas v'shalom. So the idea over here is that someone does stuff with his actions proves otherwise than the bitachon b'Hashem. Now we see over here. Also, another thing the Navi said, that the Navi Yirmiyah says that the Jewish people did a lot of averot, a lot of sins, and they come to God when it's bad. God, we trust you, we love you. God, we're here for you. God, help us, save us. When it's bad, when it's good, when it's all good and well, you forget about God, you forget about everything. But now, it hurts right now. Suddenly it hurts. You go and run to me. What am I? He says, am I the shelter of people that do sins? There's people that do different type of sins, and after they run away to certain shelters. So what am I, the shelter for you? Now, so what it sounds over here, the bitachon b'Hashem is for only tzaddik, it's for the tzaddikim, people that are righteous people in a higher level, that don't with their actions, they don't chas v'shalom go against trusting in Hashem. With their heart, they don't even think for a moment against trusting b'Hashem. So we see over here that stuff it can be hard for someone. Also, it says, and then we said if it's only for tzaddikim, but there's also another pasuk that says, Ki Adam en tzaddik ba'aretz asher ya'aseh tov v'lo yachta. The person, there's no such thing as a tzaddik. There's going to be a tzaddik in this world, in this physical world, in this materialistic world, and he's not going to sin. And over here it's very hard. So bitachon b'Hashem is not even for tzaddikim. Bitachon trusting God is not even for tzaddikim. It's much higher. It's for greater people. For Moshe Rabbeinu, that's trusting Hashem. Or Avraham Avinu. So over here, the famous Sichah about Rabbi brings a very beautiful thing, and he upslide and he changes everything, the whole perspective over there, and tells you like this: the tzaddikim don't think that bitachon b'Hashem is for tzaddikim, and he brings what the Shara B'tachon says. Shara B'tachon says is also, and he brings it in his, and he tries to prove it in his words. And says, don't tell yourself that Bitachon b'Hashem is only for tzaddikim. And he says like this. He brings the Shara B'tachon in previous chapters. This, if I'm not mistaken, it's the second chapter. He says, "Sheyeh mi shebotach alav betachlit hanedivot ve'achesed lemi sheraui lo ulemi she'eno raui lo." So he says, stop there. He says, so to translate what he says over here, what's true bitachon b'Hashem? That God's going to be generous for someone that deserves it and for someone that doesn't deserve it. So what does that mean? If you have believe in God, you trust in God, it doesn't mean only if you do the right thing. You don't have to trust on only that if you do the right thing, God's going to help you out. Also, God helps out people that are not righteous, and God still helps them out. Why? Because he has a spark of God with him. Why? Because he has a couple of schuyot, he has a couple of merits. And also we said God has insurance for the whole entire Jewish nation, for everybody. The question is, what type of insurance do you have? Is it A grade, is it number 1? Or it's Z, that the people that whatever they need to. Why? Because then maybe they come in Kippur to Tefillah, they come to the synagogue in Kippur, and they have a couple of schuyot, they help out Jews. And from there, God decides to give them. Or even people that are just Jews, and they are do sins because they want. Rather, the people that don't know better. And now when they do a small thing, for them it's considered something big, and God gives them and rewards them. So we see it, whoever trusts in God, one of the factors is to trust in God, that he has to be someone that he has to understand that God also sustains and helps people that don't deserve it. So it says over here, and he brings that in the Sefer HaIkarim, this is Rabbi Yosef Albu. He brings over there, it says in Tehillim, it's the famous, everyone says, כלומר, אף אם אינו ראוי מצד עצמו, מדרך הביטחון להמשיך חסד חינם על הבוטחים בהשם. Even if you, by yourself, are not a righteous person, you're not a tzaddik, but you try and work hard to have bitachon b'Hashem, God's going to surround you with chesed, with righteousness. God's going to help you out. Another thing we see in the book called, in the Sefer called, in the book, it's called Kada Kemach. This is written by the Rabbeinu Bechaye, but not Rabbeinu Bechaye of the Chovat Levavot. Rabbeinu Bechaye of the Chovat Levavot, his name is Rabbeinu Bechaye ibn Pekuda. That's his name. And the Rabbeinu Bechaye of the Kada Kemach, his name is Rabbeinu Bechaye ben Asher. So he writes over there, ובוטח בהשם יסגבו מן הצרה בשכר הביטחון אף על פי שהייתה הצרה ראויה לבוא עליו. Someone has ביטחון בהשם, even a little bit, but when a bad thing's going to happen, even because you had this little trust, that you had this trust is going to protect you as a shield. So the small shield. So another way to show it, there's a mitzvah, there's a halakha, that you have to pay your worker that day. Of course, there's a bunch of different ideas. What does that mean? If you have a steady paycheck, it doesn't apply. But the idea is that the worker has to understand that he's getting his money. At the end of the day, he worked for you. Give him his money. Don't push him out for a month. There's people that take people for jobs and they leave them there for a long time and forget and tell them, hey, I'll pay you back. And they put it in their chores at the lowest level and forget about it. The idea over here, you have to pay the person today on the day of his work. Now, who? In Har Sinai, besides what time you don't need to, when you don't need to pay that day, if you're working through a company, that means if I order a company, I don't have to pay every single worker, I pay the company, the company pays them. Now, and Bitachon B'Hashem works the same exact way. In Har Sinai, what are the two commandments that God said, and each one of them, the Jewish people lost their soul? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, v'lo yeh. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm your God. And the second one, that you shouldn't have any gods besides me. So what do we see? That's the two that came out of God's mouth, and the rest was Moshe Rabbeinu said that. Now, if we're going to put it says in Tehillim, Magid v'arav liYaakov v'shtav l'Yisrael. Whatever God tells us to do, He does Himself. It says in the Midrash Tehillim. It says over there, whatever God tells you to do, He does Himself. He puts on tefillin. God prays. God does everything. The idea is that how does this work so that means if He tells you halakha that you have to pay your person today, God told us on Har Sinai, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm your God. That means if you trust in me, I have to pay you today. That means if you open your morning every single day with Shar Bitachon, with Bitachon and Hashem, and you make it stronger, Shar Bitachon is a muscle. You have to keep on working it. And if you work it out, God has to pay you today. So do we see over here that if you have a little bitachon and you work on it more and more, and you get the muscles bigger at this point, God's going to open your doors and help you out much more. That you're going to have. He has to pay you today. Why? Because the halakha is God is the one that told us that. So rest you can say Moshe Rabbeinu is the company that I ordered. But God, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha lo yeh al panai. When there's not going to be any other gods besides me, and I'm your only God. Over here, He has to pay us every single day. So if you learn Shar Bitachon, if we learn every single morning, we open the morning with this every single day, without Hashem, God's going to give us and repay us 100 times more. Baruch Adonai le'olam.